Okay, guys, so today we're going to go over lesson 2.6, which was simplifying complex fractions. We're going to do the rest of the questions that were on the worksheet, just 3 of them. So first step, we want to realize that this is actually 2 fractions being divided. So we're going to box off the numerator and box off the denominator. So our goal is to get the numerator into one fraction and the denominator into one fraction, but the denominator is actually already one fraction. So that one's done. So we just want to simplify the numerator. So we have 3 over x to the second and 4 over x. The only way to get the denominators to be the same is to do what operation? Hopefully you said multiply. So to get them to be the same, I would multiply the second fraction by x, and that would make it x to the second, and then it would match the first fraction. So I'm going to rewrite it as 3 over x to the second minus, and what would the second fraction become? Hopefully you said 4x over x to the second. So now they match. I have x to the second and x to the second, so now I can create one whole fraction, which I would write as 3 minus 4x. And remember, the common denominator stays the same, so it's over x to the second. So I'm going to box that off in red. Okay, so that one's done. And actually, this one is already done. So we're just going to bring it all the way over here. I'm going to draw my fraction line, and it's over x plus 6. And I'm going to box that off in blue. Okay, so now I'm really just looking at a fraction divided by a fraction. So this being your top fraction, this being your division sign, and this is your bottom fraction. So we're just going to rewrite it as a division problem. So 3 minus 4x over x to the second. And then rather than the division line, which is right here, we're just going to put a division sign. And this is just to help us see it a little bit better. So we have divided by x over 6. And now you know this. We learned this when we did dividing fractions. So we're going to do keep, change, flip. And it would become 3 minus 4x over x to the second. And then times 6 over x. All right, what is my next step, if possible? Hopefully you said to factor, so we would factor whatever we can, but in this case we can't. So we have to put parentheses around anything that is more than one term, and then we cross out anything that we can cross out. Okay, so in this case, nothing cancels, so you would be left with, if you multiply straight across, we have 6 times 3 minus 4x over x to the third. And that's your final answer because nothing can cancel out. All right, so on to question 2. So this one looks a little bit different, still the same concept. So you want to box off what the numerator is, which is 2 over x minus 4 over x to the second, and then box off the denominator, which is 1 minus 2 over x. So we have to get both of those to be one fraction. So you're going to do subtraction, and your rules for subtraction 2 times. So let's work with the red fraction first. So as I'm writing this out, try to think about what the least common multiple would be. Hopefully you said x to the second. So to get x to the second in the first fraction, you would have to multiply by, hopefully you said x, all right? So that would give you x to the second. When you distribute the x to the numerator and the denominator, you get 2x over x to the second minus 4 over x to the second. So now can I subtract them? Yes, I can. So that would make 2x minus 4 over x to the second. And we'll wait to factor it till we get to the next one, then we put them back together. Okay, so the next one we have 1 technically over 1 minus 2 over x. So what is their LCD, their least common denominator? All right, hopefully you said that it's x, so you would multiply this fraction by x in the numerator and the denominator, and then distribute it. So that's going to become just x over x minus 2 over x. So now can I add those two together? Or subtract them, rather? Yes, I can. And remember that the denominator stays the same. So it's x minus 2 over x. And that is my simplified blue denominator. So now these two are being divided. What is our next step? Hopefully you change the division line, which is right here, to a division sign. So we're going to write them side by side. 2x minus 4 over x to the second divided by x minus 2 over x. Now, what's my next step? I never want to divide two fractions. I want to change it to what method? All right, hopefully you got multiplication. We're going to keep, change, and flip. Okay, so this one can be factored a little bit. This is the part of the fraction that can be factored. What is the GCF between 2x and 4? All right, hopefully you got that it's 2. You would factor out a 2, rewrite everything so that you keep everything organized. And when we can't factor it, remember we put parentheses. So x minus 2 would go in parentheses. And then let's play our matching game. So we have x minus 2 and x minus 2. And then I have 1x here and 2 x's here. So those would cancel. And you would have an extra x in the denominator. So then you're left with 2 in the numerator, x in the denominator, and that's going to be your final answer. 2 over x. All right, last one. So you guys are going to take a little bit more control with this one, and then I'm going to pause. I'll write the workout, and then you can continue with your answer. So we have again, top fraction. That's multiple fractions being subtracted. Bottom fraction. That is multiple fractions being subtracted. So I want you to find the LCD of these two fractions and the LCD of these two fractions. All right, so hopefully you got that the LCD of the top two fractions, the numerator, was 32. So you had to multiply the second fraction by 32 in the numerator and denominator, because remember, when we're multiplying by the same thing on the top and the bottom, we're really multiplying by the number 1, which is really important because we don't want to actually change the value of the fraction. We're just changing the look of it. So multiply by 32, that would leave the first fraction the same and change the second fraction to 64 over 32. The next LCD for the denominator was 16. So we multiplied the second fraction by 8 over 8. Because the first fraction stays the same, but that makes the second fraction 8 over 16. All right, what is my next step? Once I get the denominators to be the same, what do I do next? Hopefully you said to combine like terms and actually subtract. So that would give me x to the second minus 64 over, remember, the common denominator, the LCD, stays the same, so 32. And then the denominator, the fractions that were in the bottom, were x minus 8 over 16. So remember, this was the bottom fraction that we made, the bottom fractions that we made into one singular fraction. This was the top fractions that we made into one singular fraction, and these are being divided. So now what's my next step? Hopefully you said to change the division line into a division sign. Okay, we do this to make it easier for us, and it's just the appropriate way to write it so that we can eventually do our next step, which is keep, change. What's the next word? Hopefully you said flip. Okay, keep, change, flip. So we never want to do a division problem. We want to change it to multiplication. So we would keep the first fraction exactly the same, x squared minus 64 over 32. Division changes to what operation? Multiplication. Good. And then the next fraction, we flip it. So 16 would go in the numerator and x minus 8 would go in the denominator. Now what do I do? Now this is just multiplying two rational expressions. What's my next step? Hopefully you said to factor, okay? So we have to factor whatever we can factor. If we can't factor it, it would go in parentheses. So we can factor the numerator of the first fraction by dots. What would my answer be when I factor by dots? Hopefully you got x plus 8, x minus 8. And I can't factor 32. I would leave it. I can't factor 16, just one term, I would leave it. And I can't factor x minus 8, so I would put it in parentheses. So then you cancel. That's your last step. So you can cancel x minus 8 and x minus 8. And you can also reduce the 16 and the 32. 16 over 32 reduces to 1/2. And then what would your final answer be? What are you left with in the numerator and the denominator? Hopefully you said x plus 8 over 2. Okay, remember, x plus 8 is a team. You can't break that up. You cannot reduce a binomial with a monomial. So these two cannot cancel. That doesn't work. A binomial has to have another perfect match of a binomial that's exactly the same. So that would be your final answer. All right, guys, I hope this helped. Now you have two questions on math space that are similar to these. So good luck and feel free to rewatch this if you need to. And I will see you guys tomorrow. All right, bye. Have a great day.